Hey adventurers,
today is going to be our... No,
Wow.
let's do it together! Why'd you collapse it?
The problem is we're never gonna end up talking exactly the same.
We were.
This
is our January wrap-up for 2023. Ready?
We made it through.
Begin.
Alright, where's my list?
The first book I read in January of 2023 was The Healers Apprentice by Melanie Dickerson, I believe, And someone asked me if I'd read anything by this author because they were curious about a more recent released book of hers, and I hadn't, but I saw this was available on audiobook and I needed an audiobook. I read it and I had mixed feelings about it. There were aspects of it that I liked. It was your typical, like, medieval drama with slight... was there magic?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure there was, like... No. I honestly can't remember if there's magic or not. I'm leaning towards no in that area. I didn't love the whole focus on the romance just because it's so easy to do romance poorly, but overall the book was decently written. The only downfall was a couple aspects of the romance that I didn't particularly love. And like, it was decently clean and there was a focus on God, which was really cool to see in a book like that, especially coming from... I think that the author did a good job of tying the character's relationship with God into the time period.
The first book that I finished in January was Trust of the Emerald Sea. This is Secret Project 1, Brandon Sanderson's Secret Project number 1.
Not a secret anymore.
It's not a secret anymore. They have fully announced it and everything, and they're using its official title, and Tor has announced it and shown their cover for it and everything like that. So it's out there. I did the Kickstarter last year, and so I got the book on day one and listened to it, pretty much all of it on the 3rd, because the 3rd was a Monday. That was the first day that I got to actually listen to it, I think. So that was the first book that I read. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was... And I will have a review. You'll actually be seeing the review before this because this goes up Thursday. My review goes up Monday. And yeah, it was very, very enjoyable. Lots of fairy tale, whimsy type storytelling, and that was cool.
The other book that I read in January is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a fantastic read. I loved how the author incorporated what he wanted the main character to learn into the story and how that was the whole plot and the focus of the story. It was done in such a unique way. The only problem I have, and it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the book at all, was once again the romance. I personally thought, and if you guys have read this book you'll know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to go into spoilers here. The scene at the end that concludes the romance, I didn't think was necessary. It was like the second or the very last chapter. I think it would be better off without that personally, ending with the previous scene with the love interest. So that's just my personal opinion, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on it who have read this book. This is the second book by Marcus Zusak that I've read, and I did really like it a lot.
The next book that I finished was Brotherhood of the Wolf. This is book 2 of the Rune Lords by David Farland. I read book 1, which is The Sum of All Men, or just the Rune Lords, depending on which edition you have, I guess, and where you look in the book, what the title is. Anyways, so this is book 2 of that series. I read the first one in December, that's what I was trying to say. And so I read the second one this month, or last month now, and this of course is my buddy read that I'm doing with Nico from Nico's Book Reviews. What do I need to talk about this? It started out pretty slow. The first half of it was not the most fast-paced, interesting. It was very much, alright, now we're building out this massive series that it's going to be. And that was fine. The second half, specifically the last quarter of it, really ramped it up and just did, I don't want to use the term Sanderlanche for this because that's specifically talking about Sanderson, but it was basically that, and since Sanderson learned from David Farland, I'm okay with calling it Farland Lanche or whatever. Anyways, so it very much built up to that last quarter where a ton of stuff was happening all at once.
The next book I read in January was Secrets in the Mist by Morgan L. Boucher. I loved this. This was fantastic. I wasn't sure how I would feel about this steampunk. I haven't really read anything that's steampunk influenced. There was the equivalent of zombies in here too, which I've only read one other book with zombies. I don't mind them. Like, I don't love the idea of zombies. They're gross and eerie and too many... What was that game we played?
Color or Black Ops 2.
Yeah, too much Black Ops 2 flashbacks, but aside from where I die, clearly if that wasn't clear. Anyhow, I loved it. It was really great. I was so invested in this story and in this world. The book left on a cliffhanger, and I honestly can't remember the last time I've read a book that ended on a cliffhanger. Like a really solid, good cliffhanger. Usually the authors do a great job of wrapping things up and leaving enough loose threads that you're interested in book 2. This wasn't like that. It was like the story, I was like, wait, how is there only 3 pages left? We have a lot more to accomplish. And then the book ended, and I was like, hey, this isn't okay because I need to know the rest of the story. And so, of course, I went and I got the audiobook from the library, which is Blood Secrets by Morgan Albuset. So I read The Mist Secrets in the Mist and Blood Secrets, and I love them both. They are fantastic. I want to say that there's book 3 in the Skyworld series coming out, but I don't know that for sure. Book 2 was much less of a cliffhanger and just very satisfying. This is definitely my top book I read, one of my top books I read in January, and another fantastic read from Enclave.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's only 2 because apparently Enclave likes you to do duologies.
Maybe.
Start with duologies. And that is her debut, isn't it?
I don't know.
Maybe it's not.
No,
Anyways.
it's not.
Okay.
No.
All right. Anyways, the next book that I finished, the first book that I actually have physically here, because my copy of Trust and the Emerald Sea is not here yet, anyways, is Simulated by Nova McBee. This is the second book in the Calculated series. This is the second time I've read this book. I liked it way more this second read-through, on this reread, than I did on the original one. I liked book 2 more than book 1 the first time. Now they're both sitting about the same, but that's because I know where the series is going, what happens in book 2 and book 3. So when I read book 1, my appreciation of it rose way more than my appreciation for book 2 rose. So they're now sitting about the same. It's like a high 4.5 type thing, and I very much enjoyed it. Continues the story from book 1, but definitely takes it in new directions, and still, I really enjoy this series.
I also read Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens in January. I don't know what I expected going into this book. I thought that I had an idea of what the story was about based on great illustrated classic readings and just such a well-known story. And I kind of had the vague idea of like the first quarter, and then beyond that, it blew my mind. And not in the sense of the story was so fantastic it blew my mind. I think it was a well-crafted story, but just because it exceeded all my expectations, and I just really didn't see that ending coming. And if you've read Charles Dickens, it's not like, I don't know, it's not that mind-blowing of an ending. It fits the story, and the progression works really well. And you even get to a point where you start to foresee these things coming, predict them. Yeah. But it was good, and this was my January classic that I read.
So we do have an unabridged edition of it.
Yeah, we did. But do you want to read these?
Yeah, it's small. Next book that I read is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is part of my annual reread of The Lord of the Rings that I do every year. I end the year with The Hobbit in December, and then I start the new year with The Lord of the Rings in January, February, March, or just January if I decide to read all 3 of them then. Anyways, I read Fellowship of the Ring. Absolutely phenomenal. There was a lot of things that I was noticing and commenting on as I listened to the audiobook, the Andy Serkis narration audiobook. And he was phenomenal. He did very much pull from the actors who played the characters in the movies, but he also didn't constrain himself to just those actors and those voices. And he does a very good job at narrating everything and telling the story. And because of the narration and because I was able to focus on some of the things, I actually found things that I hadn't noticed previously, and things usually that tied into the greater lore as a whole. Things tied back to Silmarillion and stuff like that. And because Owen Edwards had just gone through his reread of Silmarillion and talked about every chapter as he was going through it, I was able to pick up on these things and remember them and connect the dots, and so to speak, I guess is the turn phrase. Anyways, I really enjoyed it. As always, still my favorite book of all time.
Okay, you guys are gonna be astonished by this. I read The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. I don't know, maybe I haven't talked about my feelings on Brandon Sanderson very much. I must have.
Not very much.
Because I finished the first era 1 on the channel when we started. Anyhow, I have mixed feelings about Brandon Sanderson, but Alloy of Law I loved. I listened to the audiobook. It was so good, and I am in love with the story and these characters, and I was so afraid they were going to kill characters, like main characters in the book. It kept me on the edge of my seat. So, I love the book. It was fantastic, and I am looking forward to reading the other books in this series, but I'm taking my time getting to them just out of preference.
What's the next one I've got? Ooh, More Than a Gunslinger by J.R. Carrel. This is a self-published author. This is a booktuber. I'll have his channel linked in the description down below. Anyways, my review for this won't be out for a while because of how far behind I am on reviews, but this was fantastic. I did not know what to expect going into this, and just pretty much from page 1 I was just grinning, listening to it the entire time. And it was, so he sent me the physical book, which was awesome. And then a couple months later, he was like, hey, I've got the audiobook. Do you want the audiobook too? I'm like, well, sure. I'll probably be able to get to it way sooner because of that. What can I say about this that's not really spoilers? It's a Western, or kind of, it's more of Eastern United States, but it's set in Western time period. And cowboys, tall tales, so you know how some nations and locations have fairy tales, and then America has tall tales. Well, this is more of like tall tales for America, and it's very cool and very, very well done.
I want to read it.
It's good.
Can we do a photocopy so I can color this?
It's got one little splash of color on the ring, and I really like it.
I love the book, but it makes me want to color it.
Yeah. Continuing on.
It's my turn.
With Kate's book.
I read On Writing, a Memoir of the Craft by Stephen King. So I read a nonfiction, and I read a classic in the month of January. Plus, I read fiction.
Brandon Sanderson.
And a Brandon Sanderson. We are off to a great start in the year.
Oh, yeah.
If I can just keep up like this consistency, not necessarily Brandon Sanderson, but with others, we'll be on a good track. On Writing, a Memoir of the Craft by Stephen King is probably one of the most thought-provoking books on writing that I've read. I listened to the audiobook, and I want the real copy, the hard copy, so I can reference things in it. He gave some really valuable information and a couple different ways of thinking that really influenced me as a writer. It's also fascinating to me because he wrote the book over several years, starting as highly what's the word I'm looking for? Prolific and successful writer, and he went from that into a point where he has a much better reflection. He had something very significant happen in his life that caused him to view things in a different light, and it's really interesting seeing his before and after, how it all ties into his view on writing. He had some really valuable information in there, and I'm so glad I read the book. It was fantastic, and I would recommend it almost to anyone. If you want more information on it, I'd be happy to share that.
Alright, what's next? Oh, Bone Shroud by Andrew D. Meredith. This is book 2 of the Collation Saga. I read book 1, which is Deathless Beast. I think I read that in December. It might have been November. Anyways, Deathless Beast was amazing. I absolutely loved Deathless Beast. And I was very, very excited to get to book 2, Bone Shroud. And then the author sent me the audiobook, and I'm like, awesome, now I can get to this one super soon too. And it was just as good. Continues, the way he tells stories, and I think I wrote this in my Goodreads review of Bone Shroud, I think it was. Anyways, there's so many important goings on throughout the entire book, but he never takes time he never fails to take time to let the story breathe and to let you have these moments of life in the story. And it's so well done, the mix of constant action with these pauses for humanity to show, and just how everything works in the story is very, very cool. I will have a review of Bone Shroud eventually. I may try and bump it up because, again, it's self-published author, but I don't know. It'll either be a couple months or it'll be sooner than that. That's all I can say.
Okay, I'm gonna hand you my tea while I gesticulate.
The next book that I finished was The Dead Zone by Stephen King. Finally. This I started in October, on October 1st, I believe. By the end of December, I had read about 200 pages, I want to say. So it's a 500-ish, almost a 600-page book. 595 pages. And so I basically read 400 pages in January, which is very good. Like, for me, that's, if that was all the physical reading I'd done in January, I'd be very happy with that. 400 pages is a good amount for me to do. That's basically 100 pages a week. The way, with the speed that I read, that's not bad at all. So I'm very happy to finally have finished this. I don't know how I feel about it. I liked a lot of the things that it was doing. I liked a lot of the way that it was telling stories, but it didn't go into the supernatural or paranormal, I guess. Paranormal is probably better terminology for it, as much as I wanted it to. I don't remember what all I said to you about it after I finished it. But anyways, that's kind of my thoughts. I enjoyed a lot about it. I didn't enjoy some aspects of it. There's one chapter that could just completely be cut and it wouldn't affect the story at all.
Sounds like Stephen King to me.
Yeah. And so that's kind of my thoughts on that. I didn't really like how it ended, but I understand why he chose to go that route. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
I don't have any more, I guess.
Oh, you don't have any more?
I thought I had another one, but...
Anyways, this has been a great reading month so far, and I've still got a couple more books. The next one I have is Becoming a Druid by Mike... Oh, what's his last name?
Sorry guys, Donaldson?
No, it's not Donaldson.
Oh, okay.
It is Mike... Oh, come on. My Goodreads won't load fast enough. Mike Mullman. So Becoming a Druid is book one of the Protectors of Pratani, and he mentioned on, I think it was Wizardly Do Discord, he's like, if anybody's a reviewer and would like to listen to my book, I've got some audiobook codes that I need to give out. And so I was like, sure, I'll reach out. It sounds kind of interesting. And then I listened to it and it was very cool. The magic system was very much anamorphing, and there was much more to it than just that. But that was a major part of it, and I love anamorphing. So that's just like very cool, the way that that world works and the story works. And I will eventually have a review for this one up too. I don't know how long it'll take for me to get that, but I will have one for that. Let's continue on. And we're going to jump back a couple books here and let Kate refilm this section, see if she can concise it up a little bit.
Concise it up. I read Vienna Prelude by Bodhi Thioni, which is book one in the Zion Covenant series. It was pitched to me as a World War II historical fiction that the main character played an instrument in, so I was really intrigued by this. I found that when I read the book in large chunks, I enjoyed it better than when I would read just little bits at a time. And then the first 2/3 of the book, I was very frustrated with the character because of her choices in regards to love interests.
Plural.
This plural, yeah. The last third of the book, she made some realizations that really changed my perspective on her, and she changed as a character. So we're seeing that character growth, which I think is really beneficial to the story, and I enjoyed it a lot more. The pace also picked up a lot at the end of the book, so it was more intriguing. So the first part, 2/3 of the book, I was frustrated with the character, not because of the story, but because of her choices within the story. The last third, she got a head on her shoulders, and I could follow her along and not be frustrated anymore. And I really appreciated that about the book, and I'm willing to read the other books in the series.
Alright, what else have I got? Authority by Jeff Vandermeer. This is book 2 of the Southern Reach trilogy. This is the sequel to Annihilation. And I loved Annihilation. The atmosphericness of that book and you're confused going in and you're confused coming out, and it was exactly what I was looking for in that series, and the answer to the end was satisfying. Because it wasn't what I was hoping that it wasn't. So
That was quite a sentence.
Yes. So then I was super excited to continue the series at some point. I didn't know when I would get to it, but I needed an audiobook. I'd finished them all the audiobooks that I had at the moment, and I was like, I need some audiobooks. So I went and requested Authority, The Mark of Athena, and Dresden Book 2, which I don't remember what that one's called. Full Moon, maybe. And I requested all 3 of those on the same day from my library, and as it happens, they all came. So I made a mistake, and the last 2 books got cut off because I forgot to delete the rest of the videos off my phone. I don't know if this will actually still work because I still haven't deleted them out of my recently deleted. But Kate will watch and make sure that everything's continuing to go.
Can you just sit over there?
Oh, go ahead, that's fine.
Okay.
she's gonna just sit there and make sure that the live stream or that the video keeps filming while I stand here and finish my discussion of Authority, which I will simplify and make much shorter than I had the original one. Anyways, I liked Authority. It's the sequel to Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, and it was a very different story in that it didn't follow it wasn't set in Area X and it didn't follow the same characters. It followed a different character who was outside of Area X, who is basically a director of the Southern Reach that was watching over Area X and monitoring it and doing scientific studies on it and stuff like that. So, the thing that I liked the story, I did like the main character actually quite a bit, but it took what I'm trying to say. And so to continue, it used more language than I remember there being in Annihilation, and that took my enjoyment down a little bit, but overall I still enjoyed the story, not as much as book 1, but still quite a bit. And so we will quickly continue on to the next book, because we have other things that we need to get doing today, and we're already 23 minutes late for them. I read The Emperor's Soul. That's not this entire book. This is Arcanum Unbounded, which is a collection of Cosmere short stories or novellas. And Emperor's Soul is one that's set on Cell, which is the world that Elantris is set in, but it is on a different part of the world with a slightly different magic system that ties in and is very similar in many ways to the magic system of Cell, the Aeon Door. And I really liked the magic system. I liked the world. The story wasn't my favorite, but it was still very good, and there was some really, really cool stuff that was done in it. This is part of Sanderson's older works, what I'm considering his older works versus his newer works, and I tend to like his older works better than his newer works. What else do I need to say? Anything else, or is that just about it? Anyways, I liked it. I will have a review for it. It's not my favorite Sanderson, but it was good.
Did you mention the title of it? Sorry.
Yeah, The Emperor's Soul. That was the title of it, if I missed that. And I had one thing that I was going to say. Part of why I wanted to read this was because it was a novella, and I'm trying to figure out how to tell short stories, or stories that don't become so grand as most of mine tend to grow to. And so I'm trying to learn how to tell short stories or novellas and stuff like that, and so that's part of why I read it. The other part was because I've been talking to a coworker, and she hadn't read it, and I was like, all right, you need to read this, but she's like, okay, but you have to as well. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I read it. She hasn't read it yet. Anyways, that's about all that I have to say about that one, and we will now end this in the video with Kate popping back on, and we will...
Pop! Here I am.
We will close it out. Thank you guys for watching An Erudite Adventure.
We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and we have our social medias linked down in the description.
As well as any booktubers that I mentioned. They will also be linked down there. Actually, I think I can link Andrew D. Meredith down there too now.
His social media, we'll link something.
Yeah, because he's got a channel that he's doing Happy Little Mapsidents, which has got a great song to it.
Random shout out we have there.
I'm excited for this. So, thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.